So I was asked to present information that I had uncovered and discovered during my part in the investigation. And during a cold case task force meeting that had about 30 people involved, I gave a 2-hour presentation.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. You know, you have a ransom note where you could say, well, the ransom note could have been written by someone inside the house, or it could be written by the intruder, right? I just don't think it's written by the intruder because there wasn't actually a kidnapping. And so in that sense, I don't think you can say there's no evidence of an intruder. There's possible evidence of an intruder, but it's improbable, right? And so, but to say that the ransom note proves that there's evidence of an intruder, I think is a flight of fantasy, whereas Lacey seems to think the opposite, that the ransom note is proof positive of an intruder. And that, to me, is unreasonable conjecture. That is where you say, wow, is this really reasonable and logical and sensible? You know, is this investigator, and think about all these people she's mentioned, JonBenet, Peter Maguire, Bill Nagel, are they all in agreement that the ransom note was written by an intruder? Now, she's not being specific about it, but isn't this what it comes down to? She says, your conclusions are based upon suppositions and inferences. Your presentation lacks fundamental, substantive, factual basis from which reasonable minds cannot differ. It sounds pretty authoritative, doesn't it? She goes on to say, I must repeat, there's no substantive basis to your theory. It is almost pure speculation as to what could have happened rather than evidence as to what did happen. So the lady doth protest too much, doesn't she? She's saying the same things kind of over and over again. She's very resistant to what she's saying. She doesn't give him credit for anything. You know, after 2 years working as chief investigator, does she give him kudos for anything? She goes on to write, you requested in your communication of January 5th that your presentation be shared with certain entities in law enforcement. It will not be shared with them. There's another Bob. We will not be part of this mockery you are trying to market. We take our jobs and our role with regard to this case seriously. And I must say, if you think about the John Mark Carr thing, is that a serious taking of the evidence in the case and all of that? When and if, just think about linking John Mark Carr to this case when there's literally nothing linking him. Anyway, when and if we have a serious suspect based upon substantial evidence, we will work closely with all appropriate agencies. This is not that time. So, as you can see, Lacey calling Kolar's theory a mockery you are trying to market shows just how clearly there's no mincing of words and no love lost between these two. You can see, if you get on the wrong side of Lacey, what can actually happen. This is an undermining letter. This letter, if published, you can imagine how it is meant to discredit Kolar, meant to show him as not a credible investigator. That's what it's trying to do repeatedly. Can I just say it galls me to think that it was this particular prosecutor who wrote this, who wrote the supercilious letter, who also authorized the Circus Act, that was the amateur hour known as the investigation and arrest of John Mark Carr. Now, I also think this is kind of the reason why Kolar wrote the book. And remember, it took 5 years to reach that point. You know, he received this letter in 2007, and he felt like, I've done a lot of research. I think it's worth something. I know what that feels like. And I would like the people involved to be aware of it, just be aware of this research. And then she basically puts a barrier there and says, we are not going to share this. We're going to shut you down. And so that is what happens. And so he's done all of this work and he feels like he needs to show it to someone. He needs, and that is how all of this ends up being foreign faction. And let me ask you, especially if you've read Foreign Faction, do you think Foreign Faction should be laughed at? Do you think it's a mockery? Do you think it is a book that shouldn't be out there? It's the second most popular book. It's even more popular, even more successful than the Ramsey's own book, The Death of Innocence. And I think all of this shows just how well Lacey knew how to investigate the Ramsey case, better than anything. I mean, John Mark Carr, right? Lacey knew how to investigate the Ramsey case better than anything. And John Mark Carr is a good example of that. You also had another DA, her successor, basically saying it was unreasonable, to put it mildly, to do what she did. Now, once again, what confidential information do you think former DA Lacey was referring to here? She says, these are the last two paragraphs of her letter. She says, I'm requesting that you return forthwith any and all information. Just look at how sort of polite she's being, but it's actually scathingly polite. She's being so polite in her to say return forthwith any and all information. Why? Because she doesn't want him to write a book. She doesn't want him to go to the media. She doesn't want him to. She's trying to shut him down. The information you obtained while under the employment of the Boulder District Attorney's Office as it applies to the Ramsey investigation. You were not granted permission to remove any such information from this office. Well, think about Lou Smith, how he did exactly the same thing. This includes all reports, documents, photographs, CDs, or other materials, and anything prepared using such documents. Think about how Lou Smith took all of that and he's made endless documentaries, right? And even his presentation, Lou Smith's presentation, the actual slides, have been published. Finally, I need to remind you that as of the date of your resignation from the Boulder District Attorney's Office, just think about those words again. I need to remind you, you are no longer protected by any immunity from civil litigation. This is the final insult. Basically, if you're not careful, we are going to sue you. And that's, again, just these are our efforts to control you and shut you down. The information you've gotten, we don't want anyone else to know about. We want people to know about the intruder theory. We don't want people to know about the other side. Based on your conduct as an investigator, again, that's this very supercilious, basically saying you haven't been professional. We want other people to know that. I recommend that you discuss your unauthorized activities. That's another slight towards him that is meant to, it's a word that is meant to trigger people reading this, including journalists, to say, wow, this guy's not credible. He wasn't professional. With the City of Telluride's Risk Management Office to determine what, if any, liability your current employer might have as a result of your activities. That's actually a spelling mistake. And so it seems like she's trying to get him into trouble in his next job. And again, quite a scathing, nasty letter from a lady who looks kind of quite sweet, doesn't she? All right, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Ramsey case. Look out for the final part, part 10, the final part in this 10-part series. If you've enjoyed the series, let me know, and then we might do a follow-up series to this called Second Opinion, which deals with a very interesting area dealing with the coroner and him seeking a second opinion on a particular aspect of the JonBenet Ramsey case. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.